Maria, back to you.
All right, Blake, thank you so much. Blake Berman with the latest there. I want to bring in Chris Stirewalt now, Fox News digital politics editor and co-host of Fox News Channel's Perino and Stirewalt. I'll tell you what. Good to see you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
So what do you make of this? Donald Trump closing the gap here. Is it normal for polls to get tighter as we get closer to the election day? Or is he just gaining momentum?
No, it sure is. You expect some tightening at the end. When we look at the array of polls, when we want to know the state of the race, so let me back up. Our poll is most useful because I want to know how are independents voting? How are different demographic groups breaking out? That is invaluable information as we're doing forecasts and projections going into the end of this cycle. That's what I want to know. So this is the marrow in the bone. But when we want to look at what's the state of the race currently, of course, we like averages of polls. So this is at the lower end of the spectrum for averages of credible polls. The point, I think, today is probably 5. He's probably 5 points down in an average of national polls, which is a little bit more than Mitt Romney lost by. We are seeing some tightening here, but I would also caution Donald Trump and his supporters. More than 10% of the votes that are going to be cast in this election have already been cast, and there will be another million or more cast today.
Do you look at 1980 when 2 weeks prior to the election polls had Reagan down 5 to 9%? Is there any comparison there?
Well, you know, the 1980 election is an interesting one. Reagan had been behind at the beginning. He zoomed out to a big lead in the summertime. And then coming out of the Democratic convention, we saw the race. I was 5. The race tightened dramatically going into the home stretch. Now, there was only one debate, and that debate happened at the very end of October. Or there was only one debate that featured both Carter and Reagan. And after that debate, you saw the numbers start to pull apart. But Reagan was, in an average of credible polls, in the lead throughout. It got very tight for a minute in the closing weeks, then the debate occurred, and Reagan pulled away at the end.
Wow. All right, so it's not apples to apples exactly, but it's interesting to
Donald
look
Trump,
at. Yeah.
And Trump has not led in an average of polls, an average of real polls in this race. He's been close. He's been a point and a half or 1.2 points back, but he's never been able to quite get ahead.
Dagen, what do you think?
Chris Stirewalt, good to see you. What about the argument that there are millions of hidden Trump voters who are just going to rush to the polls in less than 2 weeks?
Well, I mean, people got to say something, right? You're running for president. You're not just going to go out there and say, well, it's over. Never mind. Yes, sometimes the polls are wrong. We have seen the polls be wrong in the past. On the presidential level, on the quadrennial presidential level, the last time the polls were wrong was when Harry Truman lost, and they were just getting started with polling in 1948, and they stopped polling weeks out. On the main, polls in quadrennial presidential elections in the United States have a fantastic track record. But there are aberrancies that we have seen in 2015, the British parliamentary elections that were a surprising win for the Tories. Things happen, and Trump now has to tell his supporters that, or otherwise they'll get disheartened, and it turns from a narrower loss to a wipeout.
Hey, Chris, it's Kevin Kelly. Were you surprised that Gary Johnson ended up getting a couple more percentage points? Typically, at this time in an election cycle, we see the poll numbers go down, but it's from this one, it showed he came up. And what do you make of that?
Well, 54% of respondents in this poll said that Donald Trump was not qualified to be president. That means that there are plenty of Hillary Clinton voters that have to, plenty of Republican-leaning voters that have to go somewhere. The question at the end, and I think this is particularly applicable to those 4% that say they're undecided, how many of these people really end up voting, right? How many of these folks say, you know what, I am going to go vote for Gary Johnson, I am going to go vote for Jill Stein, or I'm going to make my mind up, and how many of them just say, I'm out?
Do you think that this will affect the congressional races at all? I know a lot of, disenfranchised Republicans might not go vote at all, and it'll affect Congress.
Well, if I were Paul Ryan, I would have better abs. But also, I would be rooting for Gary Johnson in a big, big way. I would also be rooting for Evan McMullin and other candidates that will perhaps get Republican-leaning or conservative voters to the polls who aren't quite sold on Donald Trump or not comfortable with Trump to go vote. Get out and vote and feel good. Go cast your ballot for Gary Johnson. Oh, and while you're here, please vote Republican down the line.
Okay. So, and what if you were Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz? He says he will now vote for Donald Trump. He first withdrew his endorsement after the lewd comment tape about women a couple of weeks ago. Chaffetz tweeted this last night. I will not defend or endorse Donald Trump, but I am voting for him. HRC is that bad. Hillary is bad for the USA. Chris, were you surprised by this?
No, because it's politicians, and
you think other people will follow that? Will others follow?
People have already. This is the Paul Ryan thing. So Paul Ryan believes that there's a 20 megaton nuclear bomb coming down on the Republican Party on Election Day, and he won't get out of the blast radius. He says, "Well, I hate him. No, I'm okay with him. No, we're going to work together. No, never mind." So Chaffetz is adopting the same thing. I would point to two good ways that Republicans have dealt with this. One is Rob Portman in Ohio, who took his medicine early. He said, "Yep, Trump, I'm in. Whatever, whole thing. Say what you want," and got it over with and moved on. And the other one would be Ben Sass, senator from Nebraska, who said, nope, not going to happen. I'm not going to do it. Moving on. Chaffetz is making the mistake of running around the blast zone the whole time like a chicken with his head cut off.
Yeah. Do you think they are in jeopardy of losing the Senate?
Oh, Lord, yes. Oh, my gosh, yes. Whether that comes to pass, right now I would say that the Republicans would lose 3 seats. But here's the problem for the Republicans. There's a couple right on the bubble, and they're in blue states.
Yeah.
That's Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire. Right. And that's Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania. And if if it's the race that's described in our poll, then I think they have a pretty good chance to hang on. But if it's more like the 6-7 points that other polls see, then see you later.
Yeah. All right, we'll see about that. Chris Shirewell, thanks so much.
You bet.
And you can watch Chris and Dana Perino on I'll Tell You What on Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Fox News Channel. Coming up next, backing down from the war on Christmas, a Florida mall looking to take itself off the naughty list after urging chorus groups to avoid singing Christian carols. And a bra that could support you for life, the staggering price tag on the real star of the upcoming Victoria's Secret fashion show. Back in a minute.